Happy Wednesday, everybody. How is school coming back? Good. 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 I hope y'all had a great break. Well, I'm going to start sharing my screen. We'll kind of get the introduction stuff going. Um, because we have a lot packed in today. Can you all see the screen with the accelerated math learning collaboration cycle? Awesome. Okay. Today, let me get to where we're going. This is the first part of cycle two and our agenda. We are focusing on collecting evidence. So we're looking at how we're going to collect evidence and record it, basically. A lot of our stuff is going to be on that. We do have other things we're talking about, but that is going to be kind of the main focus takeaway thing we're working on this month and next month. We're going to start off by doing a reflection using a reflect and a review and reflect protocol that I sent that out to you. We'll go over it really quickly, but when we're in the middle of that, if you get stuck, that you'll have the protocol with you. We're going to do some teaching and learning. We're going to do a quick brainstorm involving what we just talked about in the teaching and learning section. And then we have one last thing. We're going to do a deeper dive um, into interviews. It's a different way or type of interview to do. And then hopefully Angie's going to be really good to keep me on track on time. And hopefully we'll get you out of here a little bit early tonight. That's our goal. Okay, credit. Just so you know, you can get credit for coming to this part. So there's three different ways. With the ACL program, you can get credit for the workshop if you attended both days. You can get credit for coming to the collaboration strand. And those of you who are doing coaching with us, you can get credit for that. At this point, um, so far that I know of, the credit may be free. It kind of, I think it depends on if you've already had free credit through the Albion Center and you've used it all, you may not have it. But right now, I think they are offering credits for free. So I would sign up if you want to take this and are planning on coming. I would take it and you could get one credit for free at this point. I'm actually, I should backtrack and say I'm pretty sure you'll get it for free. I'm not 100% sure. And to find that, I'm just going to show you really quickly. Angie, if you, actually, I'll just do it really quickly. I'm going to put the link to our navigation guide in the chat. Here we go. So in the chat, in the chat, we have that navigation guide is there now. And if you look at the very bottom right here, the closing business, you can click on that link to sign up for credit. Okay. Again, we want to just talk about our working agreements. Everyone's a math person. All teachers, all students can learn. We definitely throw some things out that will challenge your thinking. There's been a lot of things I've learned about that have made me kind of shift my thinking as well. But that's going to happen. We hope you know that's okay. And kind of just think about those things, see if they resonate with you. And if they do, look at making some of those shifts. But one thing we don't expect you to do is change everything all at once. So just know we know it's a process, and there's a lot of things going, that we kind of talk about and don't feel like you have to do it all at once. Okay, we're going to start today by our review and reflect protocol. We're going to put you in groups. I think it's going to be two different groups. If you read the article, there are three rooms that you could join to go over and talk about the article. If you watch the podcast, there are three other groups, and I'll show you down below. I think we have Okay, in breakout rooms one, two, or three, if you read the article, you'll go to those rooms. If you listen to the podcast in breakout rooms four, five, or six, that's where you'll go. We kind of want to keep it to about five or six participants. If you end up in a room where there's a lot of people, pop over to a different one. If you end up by yourself, go back to a different another one to get with those rooms. Um, what I want you guys to do is once you get in your rooms, I want you to take just a few minutes where each of you can briefly share your initial takeaway or your key impressions, just something really quick, about 30 seconds. Talk about your impressions of the article or the podcast. And then we're going to take about 7 minutes to evaluate and discuss the strengths, limitations, implications, and then we'll have someone record what your group talked about, and if you'll pick someone else to be the spokesperson when you come back to the whole group. I did put on the navigation guide, a link to the protocol is right at the top. So if you get in there and you're like, what were we supposed to talk about? There's a link so you can go back and look at that. And then if there's the article and the podcast, if you need that. And then the bottom thing, the review and reflect group slides. That's what this will be. If you're in group, breakout group one, just you can jot right on that. Two, three, four, five, six. Okay. That was kind of a quick explanation. Does anyone have any questions before we send you to the breakout rooms? Okay.
That was interesting. So anyway,
You
what
know
was
what's
yours?
funny? I put the exact same thing you did. So
Oh
I put
wow.
the if the students do poorly, do we discount all their previous work? That's what he said. So it was exactly what you said, Jill.
Yep. Because it's like I was working with April today and I was doing an interview with a student and oh, she has me so confused. And watching April work with her, it was like, even though this isn't an assessment, I'm getting so much information from this interview. It was it was so helpful to me and it certainly was to my student because the questions that April was asking her was amazing. So taking that into context when she goes to do her test, we have a test coming up. I'm gonna, that information is going, if she does horrible on her assessment, then I would just take her and do an interview and really find out what she knows.
Right.
Sometimes some of the things she writes down, I'm like, where did you? I don't know what you're doing. So yeah, that was interesting. What was the next thing? There was after the takeaway.
Okay, so yeah, so let's key points and then one key takeaway, share initial impressions and key takeaways, which we did. And then each team member briefly 30 seconds present one takeaway from the article and then a quote, which we did. And what was
Okay.
the key point or concept that stood out to you? We kind of already did that.
Yeah.
So evaluate the article or podcast and relevance, and then discuss the strengths, limitations, and implications of the article. Do you know what I thought the whole time? This is me being naughty. The whole time I listened to the podcast, I thought of ISATs. So I don't know if anybody else did too, because they're so frustrating. My kids that will get ones or twos are some of my better students. And so then that is super frustrating to me.
Oh yeah.
Because there's no way to go to the state and be like, no, they really do know this. They just didn't do well on the test. So,
Because you're only taking one data point. You're only taking what they put on the computer, which doesn't really reflect anything. It's oh, how good of a clicker you are. I've got a lot of fast clickers in my class, and they just click through the test because they want to be done. So
right. Yes. So, I mean, but we can use it in our classrooms, and that's what's really important.
it's
So,
very relevant because when I first started teaching, then I never did interviews or observations because I just, oh, do the curriculum. Here's this test. And that was all I took. That was my data. And now it's like, wow, I can't believe I even did that because there's so much more than what they do on their assessment on their paper.
The idea that it said in the beginning, it talked about like the blur of the idea between assessment and instructions, and how that you really don't really like, I don't really realize that am probably doing a lot of different types of formative assessment without really realizing it, just through the conversations and the working through the kids and kind of seeing their thinking.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I, I, the same thing happened to me, Ashley, was, I'm like, oh, I'm doing this every day. Why don't I kind of refine it and learn how to do it better? Because, that's what I do every day. And that's like a formative assessment.
Yeah, just trying to make it more intentional.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. One thing that came up to my mind, and I'm not sure if I should mention this, Carol, or not, um, yet. I think it might be in the next section, is something that I don't understand how to implement. When I was reading the article, I was like, this is really, really cool. I love this idea of this interview, but how can I do an effective interview? Because I only have a limited time in class.
That you're talking about the let's interview a kid or let's
Yeah.
talk to a kid. I see that as a roadblock as well. And I want to talk about that, but in that next section we'll talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think everything we look at, we really have to kind of think about the practicality of things and try to find some ways to make it feasible in our classrooms, and so we'll talk about that a little bit more. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think we kind of went, I think everyone gave a really good synopsis
Okay.
of what they read. So
And what do you guys think? Do we need more time or are we good do you guys have you talked about everything, Scott, like you're saying?
yeah, I think we're good. What do you guys think? I think we kind of went over, summarized the article. I think we have a good idea of what everyone thinks about it.
Okay. Okay. And we'll talk about strengths, limitations, implications. I'm gonna pop over. I'll pop over to the other groups real quick and see if they're about ready to go, and then we'll come back and reflect on it together. Sound good?
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds great.
So that's what I utilize. But then we go through it as a whole. So all together and just looking at how they answered the question. I always tell them, like one way that you might solve might not be the other way that another person solved. And there is no right or wrong way. It's what works for you and what you're comfortable with. Um, you know, so we practice a lot in, the power of making mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes because we learn from them and we grow from them. So
When you go through your exit tickets, I have a question for you on that one because I go through them and I'm like, okay, I know what I need to cover for tomorrow, but how do you do you just gather what all the misconceptions are and address all the misconceptions? Do you have students try to figure out where their
A long day. Oh, look, Carol can answer the question. Hi, Carol.
Hey, you guys, I'm popping into all the rooms. I'm trying to see how time-wise we're doing. What's your question?
I was just looking at the review and reflect and wondering if we were supposed to write on those slides.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just something
Oh,
quick.
right. Okay.
It doesn't have to be long, just something quick about what do you want to bring back that we'll talk with as a group.
Okay.
So if you look on it, I think it just has 3 questions. What were some of the main takeaways? Any questions you have, like how would we do this? How would we implement whatever? And then any follow-up ideas. So, so I'm glad you asked that because I'm going to pop in the other groups and just have them make sure everybody's kind of going in and doing that real quick. Do you guys have any other questions?
I think that was the main one.
I
Okay.
know. Does anyone else?
Okay.
No.
Thanks, you guys. We'll come back and talk to you in a minute.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
What do we want to put down? Let's see. Main takeaways.
You must be the anonymous cheetah.
Don't know. I guess I'm not. What is it? Who's anonymous Wolverine? Is that you?
I don't know, probably.
So weird. Okay. I don't
Or
know.
I'm the ferret, maybe. I don't.
Really, really great.
Mhm.
I learned a lot from my
Yeah.
mentor person from my student teaching. So
So I used to teach at Tyhee Elementary. That was many, many years ago, but I think probably like in 1999, maybe is that we had a guy come in because our test scores weren't very good. And so this guy came in and he taught us. For at first we were like really upset. We're like just offended that somebody would come in and have to teach us all this, even though we'd been teaching. But he is actually the one that I learned the think, pair, share and the little mini whiteboards and the wait time and using sticks to call on students.
um,
And so I had only been teaching for I think about 5 years when he came, and you know first we were offended, but after he left, I'm like, these are good ideas.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Hey, you guys, will you quickly jot any ideas down on those review and reflect group slides? Just your main takeaways, any questions and follow-ups, and we're going to go back in about 2 minutes. Sound good?
okay,
And it's just on the navigation guide.
all right. Oh, there it is.
As a two in their then I know that, hey, they've got it. I can move forward. I don't have to spend as much time on this, but it's constant. And then you could do an exit ticket, and to kind of figure out, okay, what do I need to address tomorrow? But then what Angie was saying with it depends on your goal. I don't know what grade you teach. Um, okay, so I get 30% off whenever I go buy shoes because my father-in-law works here. So if I want a pair of shoes that's this much, how could I figure out the percent off? Or think like, and so if your goal is to have them have the real world application for percents, then your money is a really real thing, that they can grasp onto and know that that's important.
Hey guys, if you will just take a minute or two to fill in the breakout room takeaway slides, it's on that first section of the navigation guide. It doesn't have to be long, just throw in a couple of ideas that you guys had, if you will, okay? And then we'll go back. So I'll give you about just a minute or two to do that, okay?
You want each one of us to do it or just one of us?
Just one for the group. One for the group. Okay, thanks, you guys.
What do we want to say our main takeaways are? Importance of formative assessment. Oh, that's the only time I could picture when I could get an interview in. I guess it depends on the concept I was teaching. And if there were a lot of questions that day, I mean, I'm obligated to answer before pulling a student back. So
Hey
I don't
guys,
know, Stephanie.
I'm going to interrupt you really quickly. Before you go, will you throw in a couple of ideas in that review and reflect group slides? The link is on the navigation guide. Just your main takeaways, any questions, and follow up. We're about to close the breakout room, so if you'll do that, that would be awesome.
Oh, okay, so I don't know how to get to that. Where do I get to that?
It's on the navigation guide. It's a
Oh,
link
okay.
on there.
See, and that's why I print everything because I can never go back and forth.
Can you get to the chat? I can put it, it's in the chat.
I can go to the chat.
Okay, it's in there. The navigation guide's in the chat if you want to.
Yeah, I always try to print everything because I'm one of those people that I spend too much time looking how do I get that document? And then I miss
Oh,
out.
it's not in the chat.
Oh, it's not in there. I think I must have, let me copy that and I'll put it to everyone. I must have sent it just to one person. There. Okay, we'll just kind of look at group one. How can we fit this in was one of their questions, which is always a hard one. Group one, do you want to share out anything? Anybody from group one? Or in fact, actually, I'm going to open it up to everybody. If anybody, because we're kind of short on the share out time, if anybody has a share out that they want to talk about, just go ahead and start talking or throw it in the chat, whatever.
I was just noticing how old the studies are that I don't know, it just we should all be have this down pat, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it is stuff that they have been working on for quite a while, but I also think it's kind of hard when we're in the classroom having the time to look at all this stuff and research it. It's something that we might miss because we're focused on other things a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I was asking some of the newer teachers, so is this actually like how well is this taught in the education program? And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them went different ways of getting their degree, but I'm just like, do you know, Carol, like how well is this actually taught in the College of Education?
Well, I mean, it's a NC, like the article you guys read is a NCT or a NCSM. So that I don't know. I don't know if we have Marcy or Veronica or anybody else that has kind of a more connection with that than I do. Angie, do you know? But I think they use quite a bit of it.
I think that's a great question.
I
Yeah.
did my master's through the education through ISU,
Mhm.
and I got a lot of information about formative assessments, but I can't speak to undergrad or any other
Undergrad.
programs.
Yeah.
Like I'm my husband did the undergrad through ISU too, and he's sped. But talking to him, I feel like he has a solid understanding of what formative assessments are, but I don't know if that's specific to SPED or
Yeah.
the
Oh.
the other stuff, because it's an extra so many credits to get the SPED certification.
Mhm.
So,
Well, I feel like I can speak. Jen and I work together, and I feel like we've learned about it for a long time. But I
Mhm.
don't know if I've felt the importance of it. I don't know if I grasped the importance of it until some of these later things that I've seen. If any of you like the podcast that we read, they were really adamant that it's the thing. I mean, it's going to change everything that you do. And I think I've known about it for a long time, but I don't know that I knew the emphasis, the importance of it as much.
I watched the podcast, and in our group, I noticed he was saying, I get the message that okay, there's observation interviews. There's things you can do besides just the test that you give them,
Uh-huh.
and a lot of people were, you can't always have the time. You have large classes, but if you do group observations, you just watch. I walk around like today. I walked around while my kids were playing a game with a clipboard and a pencil, and I watched how they were adding up the dice and how they were doing it, if they were counting on or and just those little things can be an assessment, so it doesn't have to be very time consuming. It took me like 15 minutes, 20 minutes to walk around and watch everybody, and I do have a small class, so a bigger class might take more, but so you can fit that assessment in, and it's everything's assessment.
Yeah, I think that the one big key takeaway is yeah, making the time for it and planning. I think everything I've seen is planning ahead of time of what are the questions you're going to ask, that type of thing. But also, I loved how they said trust your own professionalism. If you have seen these kids do well in a certain area and then they don't do well on the test, does that negate everything you've seen? And I loved that they said no, trust yourself. So that was cool. Anybody else have a comment? Thank you guys for sharing. Okay. Sorry, we're a little bit behind, so I'm gonna hustle and move to the next thing. Um, Again, just so you know, our focus this time really is on collecting evidence and making sure that you know what each of your students are doing. I think we're always um, we're always observing in our classrooms. We're always kind of have a pulse on it, but sometimes I worried in my own classroom, am I missing some kids? How do we keep track? How do we keep track of everything for I shouldn't say of everything. How do we have a good pulse on all of our kids? So that's kind of our next thing that we're going to talk about. Let's see. I do have a video. I might I might start this, but we might not watch the whole thing just because of time. But I like the idea again of planning, so I want to just show you this really quickly.
So the observation technique is one that we find teachers report using probably 90 to 95% of the class period. Whenever kids are engaged in problem solving or solving mathematical tasks, we find that teachers are moving around the room and they're monitoring what students are doing. Sometimes, however, what they're monitoring, they report to us, is actually on-task behaviors and even serving as timekeepers for the students, which is what we want teachers to move away from. What we want them to move towards is thinking, first of all, during planning, what is it that I'm actually looking for? And what do I hope that I see during the observation? And then also, how will I know it when I actually see it? Am I looking for accuracy and precision? Am I looking for student engagement with various mathematical practices? Am I looking for certain representations? Am I looking for the use of certain tools? Or are there misconceptions or misunderstandings that I need to pay attention to and be thinking about how I'm going to respond to that?
I've been teaching, this is my 11th year. This is my second year here where I've taught 7th grade.
This is my 4th year teaching. I'm a special education teacher. I do co-taught math and English.
So I was thinking that the task, so we're building our house, and what if we projected a blank wall, and the first thing they're going to have to do is split it into a rectangle and a triangle, and they're going to have to calculate the total area of the wall. And then after that, we'll give them window options, and they can kind of choose how they want to design the wall with the windows.
I like that.
I want to get like a little competition.
Yeah. And the windows can be composite figures as well.
They can get creative, but we have a restriction with the amount of wallpaper. So building a house is expensive, and I'm going to throw it out there that we could only afford 150 square feet of wallpaper.
Yeah.
So they have to kind of know to do that subtraction to figure out how much window space.
I like that. We usually use a math practice in our objective. And so I'm between, I know they're going to be attending to precision when they're using the formulas and calculating the area, but I also think that they're going to have to persevere because it is a real world task. And some can get frustrated, and we just don't want them giving up either.
I think for this lesson, we should stick with attending to precision because it is really important when you're calculating area, especially with the labeling, like feet squared and inches. So let's focus on that. And also having to calculate the height of the triangle of the wall. They definitely need to be precise when doing that.
I will attend to precision in order to
solve a real world problem involving the area of composite figures.
Okay, so when we're looking and asking what do we expect to observe, I think first and foremost, they would have to find the area of that wall.
Absolutely. So accurate calculations. That includes the appropriate height.
So measurements aren't going to be like given, right? They have to use what they know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they're going to need to show how they're finding the area of each of the figures using the formulas.
I'm thinking that we have them in groups. And so I would like the groups to definitely communicate amongst each other, especially when they're trying to analyze the prompt and what's being asked of them.
All right, so how would you know it if you saw it?
So I think that we're looking for two different things here. We're looking for if they're achieving the content and also the math practice.
So using appropriate formulas, labeling answers, using the right dimensions. So that all has to do with attending to precision. We would also like on their work, we would see like we would see all of those things on the paper.
I would want them to be with the composite figure. This would be our third day doing that, and we've used strategies like breaking the figure apart. And so I would hope to see them breaking it into multiple shapes and finding the area of each, and then adding them together accurately.
I also think we want to see them somehow calculating how much window space. There's going to be a lot of strategies for that, but they could do 240 minus 150 and figure out that it's 90, or they could just take a window at a time and keep subtracting until they are left with 150. So just looking for those different methods. I think that they might get confused by the wording of at most, and they might think that the windows have to be exactly 90 feet when really it has to be 90 or above. So at least 90.
They also might try to make all the windows add up to 150 square feet.
Instead of subtracting.
We also want them to be thinking about ways in which they can capture what they're seeing. So in my experience, I see teachers using observations so much throughout the entire day. I very infrequently see them actually capturing in the form of some sort of recording sheet or even documenting it, maybe using their camera phone or even video to use later on as part of determining whether or not students are understanding or demonstrating the things that they're looking for.
So recording wise and providing feedback to the students, I really like this small group implementation and recording tool for observations. And I think for this time, you should take 3 groups and I should take 3 groups, and then we can kind of compare notes. And that way, if students finish early or they whiz through the task, we can extend.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys. We're gonna skip the group brainstorm. I was gonna have you go to groups and do that, but can we just talk about your takeaways from this? What are your first impressions? What are you guys thinking? Any idea?
I would like to say that I think it kind of relates also to the article about being very intentional with your time.
Yeah.
And so like what I saw in the video was, and kind of relating to the article, for teachers, like the time crunch is really huge for all of us because we only have like a certain amount of time in the day to try to do math, do our other subjects too. So being intentional was a big takeaway, and kind of doing that pre-session planning.
Yeah.
And really, really trying to collaborate and know what they're looking for. So that was my biggest one, was that they are really trying to make sure that they're intentional about what they're doing and making most of the time count.
I think, Alex, I think you hit on the things that I was thinking of, because we plan for content all the time, but we don't always plan for the other thing, for formative assessment. And I think that's huge. And I think the other thing you hit that I really thought is so important and helpful is the collaboration with other teachers. It's hard. Sometimes you're not in a situation where you really can collaborate with other teachers well, but I think that collaboration, if you can do it, is huge, just to bring all those ideas together and have somebody to bounce an idea off of. Thanks. Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Alex. Anybody else have any ideas?
I mean, I echo what Alex said in that intentionality. But also, when you think of your questions, you also think of the responses. What is acceptable? And then how are you going to respond if you have a less than, if they don't get the correct answer? So we don't want to lead them, We still want them to be able to guide themselves, but not get frustrated. So not only thinking of your responses like constructive feedback wise, but also how will you respond when they don't have a correct answer?
Yeah. And we are gonna dive more into that in following collaboration meetings, but I think that's right. There are going to be a lot of times where they don't have a correct answer. And there's in the article coming up, we'll kind of see that um focusing on a correct answer or focusing more on what they're actually thinking may even be more important than focusing on a correct answer. And we'll kind of talk about that a little bit more. But yeah, there is that balance of, how much do we let them struggle and keep it productive, and how does it go? How do we watch that it doesn't go to unproductive? Okay. Yeah, thank you guys. I'm just gonna move forward really quickly. So I don't know why this didn't show up, but you can see it I'll pull them up right here. We have here's an observation template that you can look at that they showed in the video that while you're planning, if you want to use this, that's something that you could use. And then also here's a checklist that was in the book. I don't know how you feel about this one. There may be ways that might be you could make it even more streamlined, but thinking of a way to make some recording and recording evidence. I did want to throw out I don't think we can record evidence on every student every day. I don't know how you guys are feeling about that, but I think it's really important to record evidence on all of our students, maybe over a matter of, a few days or something. But I'm not setting this expectation of you have to have evidence on every student every day, but we do need to look at trying to get evidence on every student and kind of have a good idea where each of them are. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Any other comments on that? Okay. We're gonna move forward into our last section. We're gonna skip that group brainstorming. I know Scott asked a little bit about this, but we're gonna take this last little bit of time to talk about conducting student interviews. And I sent out the article earlier to you, and it's also there is a copy right on this last part right here. But I want you to just take some time to skim over that, look at it. And then I really want to dive into this article and let's talk about, how you feel about, is this something that you would want to do? Is it something that's feasible? Kind of look at that real closely and then if it is, plan how you could do it. And let's plan on taking I'll jump into your rooms, but let's plan on taking till about 5 or 5 after 5 to give you guys time to look at the article and talk with each other on it and then come back and talk about it whole group. I have on the navigation guide, there are a bunch of questions that I threw out there for you guys to talk about if you get stuck. There's some things that you can look at there to kind of stimulate some of the questions, ideas. Does anybody have any questions on what we're going to do in this next section? Oh, the one thing. Um, I was going to ask you guys, do you want to go to grade levels and work with grade level on this, or do you want random? How do you want to be grouped? Any ideas?
Grade
Grade
level.
level.
Okay, great. Okay, so if you look at Angie Reese probably has these all set up, but if you look down at the bottom, we have K through 3 in room 1, 3 through 5, or 4, 5 in room 2, 6, 8 in room 3, high school room 4. If you guys get in and go, you know what, I want to just work with kindergarten people, you're welcome to jump into some of the other rooms that are open. Okay. So we'll go ahead and send you off to those rooms. If you decide you have, if you need to jump to another room, you're great to do that. So we'll go ahead and send you guys over. If you get stuck, just let us know, and Angie and I can help put you in rooms.
I could also go through and make sure to dig just a little bit deeper, but I really do like when it's like, tell me why you did that. Tell me why you chose that method. Why didn't you do it this way?
Right. I know, and it's funny, after reading this, we were doing like a daily math review problem that had to do with fractions, finding common denominators. And I found myself being like, oh, don't say what the article said. So it made me super self-conscious. Like, don't tell them that they have to find common denominators.
Yeah, in the article, I think it showed that they had like a specific time to interview these students outside of the class. And I'm like, that's never going to happen.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were doing it during planning periods or.
Right.
Also, they're not interviewing all the students. It was talking about like you would choose different students for different objectives.
Oh, right. But what I thought was to kind of streamline things is just, when you kind of give them an exit ticket and they're working on that, just to kind of select one or two and say, hey, tell me a little bit about how you're doing that.
Yeah, I like that idea. And I guess I kind of do that in our lessons at the end of the lesson. There's like a area where we kind of go over the goals and kind of summarize what we've learned a little bit. And I do ask more questions during that time, I guess. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's not exactly an interview, but it's more like what they're saying. It's not during the working part of the problem, though, like they were doing.
Right. I can do it better, like if they're up to the whiteboards doing like work up on the vertical whiteboards.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier for me to get around to the groups and be like, okay, why are you doing that? What made you have that thinking? Versus if they're doing C class time.
Yeah, I like that idea too. I use the vertical whiteboards and it's a lot easier that way.
I can see the benefit in it. It's just, yeah, like how do we execute it?
Yeah, one of my this is a big challenge for me because I'm learning, this is new to me and I love this. I've been teaching the old school way. And so when I go up and I ask a student, hey, so tell me how you're doing that, and they tell me some way that is not the way I would do it, then I'm like, wait a second, no, you need to do it this way, and this way. Then I'm like, wait a second, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I think some of the biggest aha moments for kids is just like you were saying, Scott, when kids go and you're asking them like, and I'm looking at it like, what in the world is going like, how did you do that? And so they'll explain it and other kids will all suddenly be like at the same time as me going,
yeah.
And I really do like that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just got to let go and let them do it.
It's hard. It's hard sometimes, but it's great when it happens.
Yeah. Yes, it's hard. I have to just put my hands, duct tape my hands behind my back or something. Maybe put something
So are we
in my mouth.
thinking that interviewing students really is, maybe we're getting caught up that it's like a formal process where we bring each student up, but instead of that, it's more like when they're up at the vertical whiteboards or when they're doing their exit tickets, just like a continual process throughout the day, not as formal as we think of when we hear the word interview. Is that what you guys are thinking?
Yeah,
That's what I'm thinking.
In the video, though, he did say to make sure that you plan to record your information. So I think you
Yeah.
are supposed to be writing it down at some
I
point.
think I think too, you could implement it the same way. So the article does mention having a specific time to interview them, to record them, which is a more formal process if you're doing it during your planning, because it's at that point it's a one-on-one, or like you might have another adult in the room. So it does become more formal. But that being said, it could be informal. It could be at the vertical whiteboards, and that would, for our age groups, maybe that works better because then that doesn't take away the time aspect.
Yeah,
Right.
to stay in contracted hours, I don't think I can do stuff outside of the classroom for interviewing.
Yeah, and during your planning period, they're in a different class. I can't pull them out
Yeah.
of English to come, hey, come into my room. I need to interview you.
Right.
You know, the English teacher's not going to go for that.
And they shouldn't have to. I mean,
No.
right? So, and we
Well, I
shouldn't
kind
have
of don't want him anyway. I want my planning period.
yeah, I mean, we already don't have enough time to plan in the first place. Why take, and that sounds bad, but it's what it is.
And do you think there's any value in like teaching the kids how to interview each other as well? I think,
Maybe.
I mean, we're interviewing them, but they should also be interviewing each other about their thought processes.
Yeah, because they do learn a lot from each other.
Yeah, they learn
That's a good point.
just as much, I think.
Or more,
I
because
like
they
finding,
listen to them.
So I
I'm done reading that. Do you guys need more time, or you guys ready to discuss this? It was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm ready. I finished.
I'm ready to.
Okay. Um, um, I think that was interesting. I really, I think I think interviews are really important, and I haven't been doing that a lot. I mean, I've been doing a lot of observations and recording, but with the student interviews today, I used it. I had April helping me with interviews, and the planning the questions first and knowing that student, then you can kind of, because you can focus on that one individual student and you can tailor those questions to what you know, what you've observed. And so, yeah, reading this article, it just gives you even more ideas, like things to avoid with when it says, saying that's right, or that if you just not wanting to guide them, but to kind of listen and only guide them if they really get stuck. Like I found today that's
I kind of saw a different side of it, like because I know we've talked about interviews to kind of understand like where our kids are at, but as I was reading this, I kind of thought of it in a different lens, as instead of like trying to do interviews to see where my kids are at, um, using it as a chance for me to learn like the basic math, like where my kids should be. Because like I'm struggling with the math teaching because I taught it my first year teaching, but then I moved to departmentalized, so I was only teaching ELA for 3 years, and then now I'm back teaching math again. And math is really hard for me because it makes so much sense to me. So when kids don't get it, it's hard for me to explain to them. And so thinking of an interview as an opportunity for me to learn how the kids are thinking about these math practices, and like instead of using it to try to figure out where the kid's at, using it as a learning opportunity for me to understand the misconceptions and what's happening.
Mm-hmm. And I would definitely agree with you too, Ashley, because I think when I first started out, especially when teaching math, it was really hard to avoid those leading or prompting students to think a particular way. By I think my very first last year when we got new curriculum, it was so hard not to just say that's right, or trying to lead them like, if you just did something else this way, Or did you actually mean you wanted to say this instead of how they were showing about interviewing students by saying, like, yeah, just explain your thinking. I'm not trying to tell you that you're right or wrong. I just want to know where you're thinking at. Or just kind of inviting them, like, how would you show me with manipulatives? Is there a different way that we can solve this instead of like those leading and prompting questions? And all of those just take a lot of practice.
I mean, sometimes I do say things like, so are you saying this? And sometimes they will say, no, I'm not. Like, and I love it that that I can get to the point in class that conversation and talking about math is normal, that they say that they can say, like, no, you didn't understand me. I'm saying that whatever the 9 in the tens place and not the 9 in the ones place, or whatever they're saying. So yeah, I think that those interviews and talking about math and like I said, I don't sit down and interview them so formally, but I think it is beneficial just for them to talk and explain, and for them to think about how they're thinking about it, and then also to defend what they're saying. And say, like, no, you didn't understand me. This is what I'm saying. So
I really like the questions too on where it says table 1 and it just says possible questions. And I swear I'm not saying this because Carol's in our meeting now, but like when she has taught with me in my class before, like she, even just with small groups, she's able to get a lot more. She was able to get a lot more out of them than I was at the beginning, because she asked them these like probing questions, and it just kind of got them thinking more. And I think even if it's not in a formal one-on-one interview setting, I think you can be conducting interviews kind of all the time. And I just really I don't know if you guys had time to read those questions there, but they're all very, very good to elicit thinking.
Thanks for the shout out, Rachel.
You're welcome. I promise it wasn't because you're here, but you are here, so
Yeah.
gotta get props. I gotta get props for they do.
Yeah, but it does take it does take practice to remember to do that. You just it's really easy to kind of go, oh, and lead them down your path of thinking, and you have to kind of stop yourself and say, oh, I mean, I've done that a ton in my own classrooms. Oh, hold on. What were you saying?
What I'm finding so difficult right now is because I do just ask questions all the time to engage their thinking. But now this year I'm getting more and more like push and support, para support, because of some students in here. And I kind of want to, like, stop, you're not helping. Like, I have a piece of paper that I show them, like, here are the questions you can ask.
Yeah.
You cannot say anything else.
Yeah.
Do not teach them anything.
Yeah.
Just ask them these questions, please.
I've seen that in my own classrooms, but coming in and visiting classrooms, we'll be working with teachers, and then the paras will be giving so much help. I'm like, too much help. Don't, but that is a hard thing to do. And you almost have to teach your paras, we want them thinking, we want them, doing their own thinking. That's a tough one.
So I've written down some of these questions, and I'm like, really, don't teach. And some of them have been like, if I'm kind of still teaching, they'll just leave. And I'm like, no, it would be good if you heard the instructions too, or saw where we were going, or what the purpose of this is.
Yeah.
So anyway, but that's what I've been struggling with this year.
A little roadblock.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna cancel. I'm gonna bring us all back, but great discussions, you guys. Thanks. All right. I think maybe you're all back, maybe not quite all, not all of us yet. Great discussions. I loved popping in the rooms to hear you guys. Okay. So we're all back, hopefully. Let's just really kind of, for the next 5-ish minutes, let's talk about some of the big takeaways. I popped in each of the rooms and I heard some really interesting things, but does anybody want to share out some of the takeaways? The value, what are, do you see the value? Is it worth our time doing this? And what are some barriers that, what are some ways we came up to overcome some of the barriers? So what ideas do you all have?
So in our group, we kind of had a consensus of, okay, we have time constraints. We don't have time to, um, interview these students outside of class. And
Yeah.
so we kind of talked about ways that we could kind of streamline things. And there was also a lot of really good questions of, okay, how do we record the data? What type of things can we ask, and what are we looking for?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Did you guys, I was listening in on yours when you guys said there's no way we can do, you're talking middle school, so you're talking about 150, up to 150 kids a day, sometimes with all of your classes. That's hard to record something on everybody. It's hard to find time to interview individually. Um, and I think you guys, when I was listening to you, what were some of the ideas you guys came up with that did work? That you guys were thinking we could do this instead of the individual interviews?
Well, I'll go ahead and say, I was hoping Sarah
Chime
would
in.
say it or something. But, some of the ideas were, hey, let's just do it, when they're doing their exit ticket, or I think Stephanie or Dawn came up with the idea of, hey, when we're doing vertical stuff, the stuff on the vertical boards, just
Mm-hmm.
ask someone, hey, can you explain that to me? How are you doing that? Is there another way to do it?
That's good. So you found ways to work around it in your and just do it in your classroom during your class time instead of trying to find interviews at different times. Okay,
Yes, uh-huh.
cool. Um, one thing, as far as collecting evidence or writing it down, recording it, I think the one thing that I think about a lot is how do we do that? Because there's a lot of kids. And um, one thing that I want to say, just so that you guys aren't so overwhelmed, is remember, I don't think you have to record something on every kid, every lesson. Maybe you're picking, taking a few notes one day on some of the kids, and then the next day you see different, kind of make sure you go to different kids. But I think jotting it down, at least some way of tracking um, written is great, because then you're hopefully not missing anybody at some point, over a span of 2, 3, 4 days, right? Or the week.
5 has those, and you can just write all of your students' name down, and
Mm-hmm.
I keep them on a clipboard and I can flip them up. On the unit I'm on, I'm only interviewing 2 students in this week
Mm-hmm.
out of my whole class, because I know that only these 2, I really need to know these 2 students. I already feel like I understand where my other students' learning are. So there'll be times when you really know where your other students are. And so you might not need to focus on all of them right then, but then other times. But if you just pre-write them down ahead of time and you just print them off from the Formative 5 website that you can go with the book,
Mm-hmm.
then it's done for you, and you just fill in their names. So that is easier, I think, than to try to make it all over yourself. Like it's
Yeah.
already been done.
Yeah, they do have it on that Formative 5 book. There are links that you can go to and get some of that stuff done. And I think one thing that you brought up, Jill, that's so important is you're collecting evidence. I mean, like we talked about with the podcast, there's so many ways that you're collecting evidence naturally, and you have a good idea of where a lot of kids are, but then okay, these two I'm not sure about. I've got to do some extra. So kind of using all of that evidence together creates that big picture of all your students. So that's a great, you know, uh, noticing that you had is that we don't have to do all of them. I'm just picking these two that I know that I need more information on. Good. Anybody else? One thing I asked in the question is this worth your time? Are the interviews worth your time? What do you guys think? I mean, in whatever varied form you do them, not having to stick exactly with the way that they did them in the article, but is interviewing and getting information from your students worth your time?
I think it's worth our time because I think kids talking about their mathematical understanding is going to help them be more successful. We even talked about students who can do all the work, and we know, and sometimes we think they're the kids that don't need to be interviewed, but I think those kids do need to be interviewed because when I ask them how they did it, they just say, I don't know, I just did it. So being able to do it and being able to talk about it are two different things. And I think whether a child is struggling or successful, both need an opportunity to talk about their thinking in our classrooms.
Yeah, I agree. I have to say, Sarah, I was in your group when you guys were talking about this, and Sarah was saying it's really amazing when a kid's explaining and you're like, I'm not following you. And then they explain some more, and then you get it, and all the kids are doing, you're like, and everybody's kind of going, oh, wow, we all get it then. And it's such a great, um, sometimes just hearing different ideas from the kids instead of you trying to explain and explain over and over is huge and helpful to them. Sarah, did you want to say more about that? Or you probably said it better than I was saying.
No, I just love it because you're right. Sometimes it's like I look at what they're doing and I'm like, they had the right answer and I'm trying to follow what they wrote and I have no idea. So I'm asking them questions and as everybody's listening to, I'll have them explain their work. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, that's genius.
Yeah.
And other kids are like, that is genius. And so sometimes just doing it a different way, some kids connect with better than what my normal structured way of doing it is. And so I really like those moments a lot. Those are my favorite moments.
And I think it also adds to that math identity and their confidence and it's just showing your kids in your classroom that we are all mathematicians here. It's not me and I'm not the keeper of all the knowledge. We're all mathematicians. So I think that's a huge value as well. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're kind of running out of time on this. I heard some ways that you guys were thinking about overcoming some of the barriers. So let's go to the last little part, taking action this month. Just with the things that you learned today and as you're going along, um, we'd like you to take this to make a goal this month to plan, collect, and document some formative assessment in your classroom. So kind of take the time to go, okay, I'm going to plan it, I'm going to figure out a way to collect it, and I'm going to document. And if you could bring an artifact back next week, or not, sorry, don't come next week, next month, that we can talk about and kind of see some of the ways you guys came up with documenting and share some ideas and collaborate a little bit next month on that. That's what we'd like you to do. Also, don't forget to sign up for the credit. Again, the link is on the navigation guide, and we will be planning to meet February 2nd. I don't think that's right. Sorry. I think I have the wrong date. I will double check that, but I think it's the second Wednesday in February. So I apologize. That's wrong, and I will fix that.
Well,
Make sure we have the right date.
Carol, it's February 12th.
Yeah, 12th. I probably just left the one off on accident. It is right in the navigation guide. So February 12th will be our next Zoom meet. So, any questions before we go? Anything that you guys want to comment or questions before we all let you go for the evening? Thank you guys for coming. We appreciate your time. We know you are so busy and we appreciate your time and all your efforts and all that you do and let us know how we can support you. All right. If you want to head out, anybody that wants to head out, we'll see you next in February. We'll see you on our next collaboration.